The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So hello everyone and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Sharif Luka and I'm a senior solution engineer working for Nakisa based out of Germany. I will be your panelist today and I'm really excited to be hosting this session. The topic for today is really an introduction to Hanelly, which is an organizational transformation and design solution by Nakisa. We have a presentation just before we go into the demo, and today I'll be covering four main topics. We're going to start with Nakisa as a company, and then I will take you through the organizational design solution, Hanelly, and following that, I will be providing a product demo. And of course, there will be a Q&A session, which is around 15 or 10 minutes, depending on the time. So please feel free to send your questions to me through the chat, which is under the question section. You can do that at any time during the webinar, and I'll be answering the questions at the end of the session. If I don't get a chance to answer all the questions during the webinar today, we will be sure that we can follow up afterwards with you by email. So Nakisa as a company, we are headquartered in Montreal, which is located in Quebec, Canada. We have international offices as well in multiple different locations: Florida, Germany, Singapore, UK, and Pakistan. Myself, I'm actually joining in from Germany. We serve over 4 million users in over 800 enterprises worldwide. With over 20 years of experience, Nakisa has grown to be a recognized leader in HR and financial solutions. On the finance side, which will not be today's topic, we are focusing on or we offer companies software to address the FIRS and the ASC 842 regulations. We're also proud to work with some of the world's leading organizations operating in more than 125 different countries in different languages and in numerous industries. So we're really industry agnostic. We work with oil and gas, public sector, education, pharmaceutical, banking, etc. The following is just a quick overview of the different milestones we went through as a company. So we started actually back in the 1990s as a consulting firm, and we built our first organizational charting solution back in 2001. And soon after that, and in working closely with our partners and customers, we realized that organizational design and modeling is really very important. It's not just about visualization, but being able to do modeling, creating what-if scenarios, and doing organizational design. So we built our first solution back in 2003 to address the modeling requirements for our prospects. And in 2007, Nakisa became a Tier 1 or a Solex solution extension partner with SAP, which really meant that the Nakisa HR solutions became part of the SAP price list. They went through a premium qualification process, were sold and supported globally by SAP. And then in 2015, we released the organizational design solution Hanelly, which is the topic of today's session, and we transitioned fully to the cloud, becoming really a cloud company, and we only offer solutions on the cloud. 2017, we also released the lease administration solution by Nakisa, and in 2018, we also are proud to announce that we are working closely with SAP to support the organizational design need for their employees. So currently we're in the project currently, and we're trying to release that for HR business partners to be able to do organizational transformation internally for their 85,000 plus employees. So what is Hanelly? Let me first start by explaining the definition of organizational design from our perspective as a company. We see that every organization, regardless of its size, works with three main pillars: your processes, your talent, and your culture. And we try to align all of that together with the business objectives and corporate strategies, which is really what we define at Nakisa as organizational design. So in one sentence, the Hanelly solution is really a powerful, intuitive solution to support organizations with design and analytics to really align your strategies and streamline your process and accelerate your business growth. And you will see this during my demo. On the next slide, this is a diagram which really shows the area of focus we have, which is, again, organization transformation. The solution itself is an ERP agnostic solution, meaning that it does integrate with SAP HCM and SAP SuccessFactors natively, but we also offer integration to other major ERPs, Workday, Oracle, PeopleSoft, and Fusion. And even we do as well Excel integration. And this is really the model we are using with some of our business consulting partners who are leveraging Hanelly for their customers' organizational design projects and needs. Now, this integration is quite important because it allows you to use your HCM data to perform organizational design tasks within our solution, something that you cannot do with your HCM solution alone. Or you could maybe do it, but with very limited and not in an efficient and streamlined manner. Aligning talent, simplifying processes, accelerating decision making are all as well synergies that you get with implementing Hanelly. When we look at some of today's business challenges, we cannot go over, of course, all of it. This is just a snapshot of some of what we've seen in talking to our customers. And the first one is really evident. You know, we're talking about a globalization of workforce. You have employees working across different regions, across different time zones, and this can often lead to complex reporting structures. And not only that, sometimes it's also not correctly reflected in the HR systems. I'll give you an example. Myself, I'm located in Germany. My manager is located in Canada, but I actually have a functional manager reporting in that I report to in Germany. So this creates a matrix structure, which is quite complex, and it's difficult to visualize and to model in general. The other challenge we see is that in order to make insightful decisions, and you need a lot of data, and it's not just related to HR, it's related to finance, it's related to talent, and you need to bring all this data together into one solution to provide you with enough data and information to take the correct decisions. And this is something that often organizations see as a challenge. They have multiple different systems, and they're all loosely coupled, and they don't really talk together. Diversity and inclusion, I think this is something we all know. Diversity can mean a number of different things. It's differences in age, gender, disability, nationality, ethnicity, and many other changes. And when we talk about inclusion, it's to build a culture where these differences are valued. And we all know this is important because, you know, studies have shown that a diverse workforce is more productive and successful and efficient. So it's not just an HR trend or a compliance topic. It also speaks to the innovation and forward thinking of organizations. Workforce alignment, reduction in force, design and model. I think we've heard so many times in speaking with our prospects and customers that the current processes they have rely heavily on offline tools, things like Excel, PowerPoint, and Visio, which are quite costly and really hinders your ability to simulate and effectively plan and implement organizational transformations. That could be from any source of maybe a small restructuring project that you need to run to a large-scale reorganization to support a business strategy change or a restructuring because of a new leadership team or just because you need to do financial realignment. Whatever the case may be, you do need a solution that allows you to do these transformations in an effective and in a rapid way. And this means as well mergers and acquisitions, divestitures, reduction in force, and basically designing the future vision of what the organization will be while fully understanding your current structure and knowing how to get to the future state and align that with your business strategies and objectives. So this is the last just topic I want to cover before jumping into the demo. And this is really what Hanelly is about. It offers different functionalities that you can enable based on your requirements and needs. I'm going to start with the org charting, giving you a clear visualization on your HR data, then or talent data, or again, financial data, depending on the different data points you bring in. Then I'm going to go into the topic of organizational design. How can you design an organization that really accelerates your business growth and in line with your objectives that you've set. Analytics are a very key and important topic as well, and it's not just to understand what your baseline is through what we call descriptive analytics, but also to be able to do impact analysis in a way when you are building a new future organization or creating a new scenario and you're changing the structure by moving teams around, you want to see the impact that has on various KPIs like the headcount, span of control, cost, and other maybe even dashboards, maybe related to your diversity and inclusion program. Are you compliant or not with that new structure that you're trying to build? But it goes beyond that as well. It goes into the area of predictive analytics. So we look at various trends in your data, for example, turnover analysis, employees leaving due to departures or terminations or retirements, and being able to filter and drill down based on this data, turning it into information, into insightful actions. So I will go into the demo now, and I will start by just a very basic view of the organizational structure. And I'm going to walk you through some use cases which an HR business partner, or HR manager, or even an organization design specialist runs into on day-to-day basis. So you will see this is the landing page, and it's divided into three main parts. The first part is the organizational structure, your baseline. The second part is the different scenarios that you're working on to support different business objectives. And the third part is the analytics and dashboards. Now, the analytics are available for both your baseline as well as your models that you're working on, as I mentioned. And we will see this in more detail. So let's start with the baseline. And right now you're looking at a position-to-position structure where we have Mark Johnson is the CEO of the company located at the top of the organization. Below Mark, there is a number of direct reports. John Berry, Director of Corporate Services, Hanelly Carlson, Director of Manufacturing, all the way down to the VP of Finance. At any point in time, if you want to navigate a specific structure, let's say I want to drill down into Sarah's organization, I can simply expand and then look at the direct reports of Sarah's organization. Notice that you will see Saskia appearing twice. That's what I mentioned when I talked about the matrix structure and the visualization of complex reporting lines. So in this case, you can see Saskia with a legal reporting line into Sarah Lambretta, and you can see her again with a dotted or a functional reporting line into Mark Johnson. Using Hanelly's chart perspectives, you can toggle back and forth between just focusing on your solid lines or the legal perspective, or focusing only on the functional perspective, which is the dotted lines, or displaying both on the screen as you're seeing here. Of course, you're probably wondering what is the numbers that are showing in the chart. So right now I am actually displaying one of the views. So there's a number of different views that are available in Hanelly to support your different HR processes and needs. The reason why I started the demo with the employee analytics view here, because this is really relevant to the topic that I want to focus on today, which is organizational design with Hanelly. So we're looking at things like span of control. What is the span of control of an organization? What is the depth of this organization? Again, these are very important KPIs, because when you are building a future organization and you introduce an organization with a very high depth, you are basically introducing inefficiencies, because you have to go through complex workflow and approval process to get anything approved. So large depth is not really something that you want to have. How many layers you have within the organization, the span of control, headcount, and different gender-related distributions. So you can track, for example, things like percentage of women in management within that organization. If this is something that is relevant to your diversity and inclusion program, you can do that very easily using these in-chart analytics. The second number I'm showing here is the headcount, and the third one is the total salary. So this is the represents the cost of the organization by looking at this. Now, at any point in time, if you want to get more information about a specific position or an employee, you can simply switch to two-panel mode. This will open the panel on the right-hand side, and you can just simply click on the box itself, and this will open the position profile. Now, there's a lot of information here. One thing probably comes into one mind is this information secure? Definitely. So we will leverage the security that is coming from your ERP There's different types of security. There's role-based security. There is an AOR security, is what we call area of responsibility, and there is additional types of security. So this information is available at the moment because I'm logging in as an HR specialist, so I am authorized to see this information here. You can see as well the employee-related information. So here I can see that Mary Jonathan, she is the incumbent for my position. I can see some various employee-related KPIs for Mary, like her talent ratings, performance or talent assessment, risk of loss information, salary information, and so on. So why would this be something useful for an HR person? If you go back to the structure very quickly here, let's take one of the use cases that an HR person would be facing on regular, based on his regular business that he does on day-to-day basis. One of it is, I want to track people that are leaving the organization, and maybe these individuals are sitting in key positions. I want to make sure the positions are safeguarded, so if they end up leaving the organization, someone else is able to take over and perform their role, especially if they're sitting in a key position or a risk that can cause a negative implication if they leave. So right away, you can see that the overall employee count changed from, if I start from the very beginning, it was 1,556 when I choose 60 to 69. That changed to 259. And I can see where they are located, which business units, which functions. I see that most of them are actually under the Director of Manufacturing. So I can root at Hanelly Carlson's organization, and I can see that most of these employees that are close to retirement are under Quimby Curtis, who is the Regional Manager of Production. There's 56 employees that are there, but in total 63 under manufacturing. So if I want to drill down and get to this list so that I can take action and make sure that I can trigger the succession planning process for these positions, I would simply search on them. So you can find here that these are the 63 individuals in manufacturing between 60 and 69. I can also toggle back and forth between different types of views to support different information that I may be interested in, that I want to track, whether or not these are critical resources, for example. You can sort, of course, on this field, so you can only focus maybe on the critical resources within this report. But in general, you have the flexibility to define the type of information that you want to display in this report, as well as the order of information that you want to show in that report. Now, the one thing about Hanelly is to be able to share information dynamically and securely. This is a key functionality, and you will see this sharing across the different modules of Hanelly. And what this does is creates a permanent link that you're able to send to users that then they can access exactly that report. So it's dynamic. So if someone leaves the organization tomorrow and I access this report tomorrow, then I will get 62 instead of 63 employees. It's secure. If I send it to the wrong person, the wrong Mark Smith in the company, who is an employee that is not authorized to see salary information or talent information, he or she will get access. So the person will get access denied because they don't have the correct authorizations. Of course, if you want to add this to your favorites, you can go ahead as well and add it to your favorite as an HR person or an executive or a manager. And if you do want to export it to Excel, which we all know it's key functionality, and this is something that is required by HR quite often, you can go ahead and export this to Excel. So very quickly, I will show you how it looks like. Here we will get, again, who generated that report, the date it was generated in, and the exact timing, and the listing of all employees that are part of this report. So now just going back and following the same train of thought, I want you to think about the other use cases that you may be facing as part of your role within your organization, whether you're an HR person or an executive, and give you another use case. Recently, I was talking to one of my prospects, and they mentioned that they have an issue with talent retention. So in order to improve that, they wanted a way to be able to search for specific talent based on different criteria. So what they really wanted to do is to search based on, and let me just give you an example here, is to look at the top performers within the organization by looking at specific position layers, and by also tracking the pay grade. And in order to focus on the specific group to maybe promote them or maybe offer them salary increases, they looked at risk of loss information. So they looked at employees with low salaries, with high performance. They have been in the company for some time, and we wanted to get a list of these individuals here. So what I've done is I changed the filter profile to focus exactly on this information that I'm interested in. And here's where you can start filtering based on performance, based on position layer, based on high risk of loss, based on some pay grades within the organization. So you end up with 5 employees that are satisfying that criteria. Now I can drill down to exactly who these 5 individuals are, and I could really compare them side by side if I really want to get more insight about them as employees. And one employee maybe strikes me is Wayne Rose. So I decide I need to go further into his profile. So from here, I can just go directly to the profile of Wayne Rose, and I will see some valuable information about him. He has a high risk of loss. He has a scarce skill. He's not a critical resource, but he has a very high performance rating, and he has this kind of salary. And when I look at the employee timeline, I realize that since he joined the company back in 2011 as a billing specialist, this was the action that happened. It was a higher action. He had a salary of 53,111 euro. He never really got promoted until today, until at least 2017. He got some performance rating here as part of the talent assessment process, but he has not gotten any promotion. He has not gotten any kind of salary increases. So maybe this is an employee that I need to do something for, and we will keep that in mind. So you can imagine, again, the type of information and use cases that you can support and business challenges that you can address using this powerful filtering that you have, as well as this view here, which dynamically changes the information based on what you've selected. I can also see the total cost of my low performers or high performance in the organization, and I can compare this to the budget that I have and see who I can promote. But let's take an example of an organizational design. So one thing I also need to mention is these icons that you see with the different color coding. Here's where we track the span of control, and every organization has best practices when it comes to span of control. In this example here, the VP of Finance has a very high span of control. In fact, if I root at the VP of Finance organization, I see that the span of control is 19, and I can see that this is a relatively large organization. Let me fit it to the page. It's relatively a large organization. So maybe I need to address this using the organizational design capabilities of Hanelly, and maybe I would create maybe a layer below and then promote someone to become, let's say, a manager for that new organization that I'm creating below, thus reducing the span of control. So how would you do this? It's very straightforward. You can start directly from the VP of Finance, or if you want to start from the very top, because maybe it's a large scale restructuring that you're going through, and you're not just aligning the span of control for the VP of Finance organization, but you want to align it across the different business units and divisions within the company, then you will start the scenario from here. So you give that scenario a name. You define the starting point. In this case, it's the CEO. Or you can say, I want to do it for the entire data set. Or I want to create an empty scenario, what we call skeleton structures, and fill it directly in Hanelly. Now, the key date is a very important date. When we're doing modeling, this is the date in which the changes will become effective when they are implemented in the back end or in the ERP. So it's a very important date. If the transformation project takes longer than expected, you can change that date later on as part of the org design properties that you can modify. So for the interest of time, what I've done is I created an org design. I haven't done any changes yet to it. I just called it org design 2019. So let me open that org design, and I will show you what you're seeing. So what you're seeing here is work areas that I've defined. So when you create an org design, you can define certain work areas, which means that you're assigning parts of the organization to different areas of responsibilities, to different HR leaders or org design specialists. So in this case, I have the CEO structure, which is now the responsibility of Mark Smith. And I also have the VP of Finance organization, and the owner of that is Elizabeth Templeton. And this is a structure that have been assigned using Mark Smith. I've also created a target and objective, and one of the targets here is to have a span of control between 5 and 13. So if you are above the target, you can see it here with the VP of Finance structure 19, which is above the target, it gets displayed in blue. The CEO is within the target, so it's green and everything is good. By the way, you can still see the same type of indicators directly in the chart. So here, the VP of Finance has a very high span of control, and that's why it's shown as 19. So let's root at the VP of Finance organization. And here you will notice the exact same structure as the baseline. So when you create a scenario, it makes a copy of it. The only difference is it's not read-only. You can also edit it. Editing meaning you can clone positions, you can create positions, you can drag and drop, you can delimit positions, and you can also delete positions which you've created as part of your model or as part of your organizational design. So, and you can see here, I've also color-coded some of these positions. For example, this is color-coded blue. The billing specialist is color-coded yellow because I want to transfer these positions under the new structure. And I've color-coded Wayne Rose as red because I've noticed this is where I found an area which I need to address, with Wayne Rose being a high performer in the organization, having a high risk of loss, being in the top layers of the structure, so he is relatively high, but has a low salary, so maybe I need to promote him and offer him an increase based on the budget that I have. So to do that, I will go under Mary Jonathan, and basically I will create a new position, and I will call this position the billing manager position. So when you do that, a new position will be created, and that position, of course, at the moment will show as no incumbent. You can also track it as a vacant position with a vacancy icon. So the solution, Hanelly, will leverage the data as you have it maintained in your ERP. So if you have shared positions with multiple incumbents, all of that will be shown in the structure as you have it maintained in your ERP. If you have assistants, they will be shown as well, showing up separately like you see on the screen here. But going back to this example, VP of Finance, span of control is 19. I want to reduce it by creating a new structure below. And maybe I would like to do some drag and drops. Before I drag Wayne Rose, let me just quickly close the profile here. I will drag Catherine Polini to become a member of that team. And I will also drag Vinel Tadai to be also a member of that team. And I will promote Wayne Rose instead of being a billing specialist to become the billing manager. So to do so, I would drill down to the employee level. In this case, I see Wayne Rose record, and I will take Wayne and I will put him as the billing manager. Now, notice what's happening in the structure as I do these changes. First of all, the span of control of the VP of Finance organization went down from 19 to 17, and that's because I've moved 2 employees under Wayne Rose here. So it went from 19 to 17, so it's being reduced as opposed to before. This becomes vacant because I moved Wayne from that position to that one. And maybe I want to continue doing some changes in the structure, but instead of doing it one by one, perhaps I want to run my mass changes. So I can do that as well very easily. So in this case, I will open the internal search, which will pull out everyone that is directly and indirectly below the VP of Finance organization. And I will try to get all these appraisal positions moved at once under Wayne Rose. So to show you how you can do that, you can just simply open the search. And in this case, search for positions instead of employees. Look for the positions with the keyword appraiser. This will return the 4 positions. I would select them, and then I will go into the mass actions. And here I get multiple different options. I can edit them if you want to normalize the data. Let's say these job codes are not correct. I want to align it with the correct job codes, or maybe I want to move them like the case here, and maybe I want to compare them side by side or even change the color of these objects. But we want to do a move operation, and I want to move them under the billing manager position, which is the position I just recently created and where I assigned Wayne Rose to be the incumbent for. So now we've done a mass change by moving these 4 appraisal positions. Now, if you want to see them, you can wait for a few seconds, or you can just simply collapse the VP of Finance organization and just open it again. And you will notice right away, you can see here that the VP of Finance organization has now a span of control of 13, and the billing manager position, you can see it here as well, has all these new positions below Wayne Rose. So this is the team of Wayne Rose after he is promoted, at least in that org design. So of course, these changes are not implemented yet in the ERP. There's a full vetting and an approval process that needs to happen before you can write back these changes. So the Hanelly solution, one of the key strengths of it is that not only you can do modeling in Hanelly, but you can also have an integrated workflow and an approval process by which you can also trigger the write back. And it's quite an advanced functionality, because if you create a model, let's say 2 months ago, and during the time you're doing a lot of changes, for example, I decide to move Kelly here, while you are doing these changes in Hanelly, the data in the back end is also changing in the ERP system. So how do you make sure that you're working on an up-to-date model? So this is something taken care of by the solution itself. There is a synchronization event that you can trigger at any point during your modeling that will make sure that the data from the back end is pushed into your model, so you're working on an up-to-date scenario. And of course, when you write back the information following the approval process, you can only write back after you've done a full synchronization process. Okay. Now, maybe one last thing I would do is just to show you another example of how I can nominate someone from outside of the scope of the VP of Finance organization. So I will go up one level. So now we're back to the CEO position. And in this case, what I will do is really look for an employee to fill this vacancy here, which I've created by promoting Wayne Rhodes. We have 1,538 employees to choose from. I will open the search functionality, and I will use the same sort of filter criteria which are available for me. In this case, maybe I look for someone that has a specific tenure in the company, has been in the company for quite some time, someone that, again, maybe has a high risk of loss because I want to maybe promote them, someone that could have a specific potential rating. I find that I have a number of candidates here. Again, I can compare them side by side if I want to, as I've shown you before, but I realize that maybe Tia Abraham is a perfect candidate, and maybe I want to promote her from being a software test specialist to becoming a billing specialist. So what I will do, I will switch to 2-panel mode. From within the search, I will take it to the right-hand side, and I can just very easily, with drag and drop, move Tia to become my billing specialist. And of course, that change will impact the span of control, will impact the headcount, and will impact as well the total salary or the total cost, because now we brought in Tia from outside of the finance organization. So let's assume that we are done with the restructuring of the finance organization. So what I will do is I will try to compare the model that I worked on with my baseline. So to do that, I will just simply take the position reporting, the model that I worked on, to the right-hand side. And on the left-hand side, I will open the Nakisa structure. But again, to compare apples with apples, I will also root at the same organization here. I will fit it to the page, and you will see right away that the structure on the right-hand side is a lot leaner than the structure on the left-hand side following my org design that I've completed, following the changes that I worked on. So let me just zoom in into these KPIs and analytics, and I will compare the differences between the KPIs on the left-hand side, which is the baseline, with the KPIs on the right-hand side, which represents the scenario that I'm working on. First of all, the span of control went down to 13. The headcount went up by 1, and the total cost went up by the salary of Tia, who was promoted from outside of the VP of Finance organization. This was done through a cross-functional move during the org design process. So it's very easy for us to compare different models side by side. By the way, you're not restricted to having only one model. Of course, when you're doing restructuring, typically you want to propose different models, and then at the end, one model becomes approved and effective and then implemented in the back end following the write back process. But you have that full flexibility to compare different models side by side, or your baseline with a model side by side. Now going back to the scenarios and just opening that scenario, you will see that my objectives have all been met, and this is why it's turning into green. So I can set my work areas as finalized. Now notice that I cannot set this one as finalized because I'm not the owner for the VP of Finance. It's actually Elizabeth Templeton. So if I proxy, if I log out of the solution, we just do it very quickly, and proxy in as Elizabeth Templeton, I'll be able to show you what Elizabeth Templeton sees. She basically sees, she gets a notification saying, oh, someone, Mark Smith assigned a scenario with you. The scope is the VP of Finance. She opens it. She only sees the scenario that she's been assigned or the work area that she's been assigned. So she can load it, and then she can perform her changes. Maybe she realizes that, okay, we don't need this position. So she decides to, let's say, delimit the position. And once she's done with the change, she would then submit all her changes back to Mark Smith to approve. So she can set this as finalized. And once it's finalized, she cannot do any more changes to the scenario, but she can also start a discussion with her manager, in this case, with Mark Smith, who assigned this to her. So let's go back again and proxy in as Mark Smith. And again, Mark Smith will receive an email notification, but also will receive, let me switch to one panel mode, will also receive these notifications in the application itself. It will say that Elizabeth started working on the scenario, and she indeed changed the status of the VP of Finance organization to finalize. She can open it. He can open it and then can start approving or rejecting the changes. So let's say I approve all these changes. And then once it's approved, I can set the entire org design as completed. Once the entire org design is completed, I can then trigger the scenario validation and the scenario synchronization. So the validation is where you run some business rules to make sure before you update the data that you're not breaking any specific rules related to the data maintenance in your back end. Things like if your organization, for example, does not allow shared positions, so you can track if you have a position with more than one incumbent, as an example, as an error, and then you can view the items that failed and correct it directly before you trigger the write back. Once everything is fine, you can go ahead and trigger the write back. And of course, you do have an audit log which tracks every single change that you worked on. These are all the changes that we worked on today in this webinar. So I've created new objects. I delimited an object. I moved some objects. Some of them were moved manually. Some of them were moved using a mass edit function. And I've created new objects as well, where I created the billing manager position. Of course, if you want to get more information about any of these moves, you can just simply select it, and then it will tell you what is the object ID. So that's the position ID, that's the position name. It was a move operation, happened exactly on that date by that person. And it was changed from the VP of Finance to the newly created position, which is the billing manager. So now one more thing I wanted to mention, which is really important, is to understand the analytics. And sometimes the in-chart analytics, they do offer a lot of information and insightful actions, but it's based on structured data. Sometimes you want to work with unstructured data. And in this case, you do have the other analytics that you can work with. Let me start with maybe one important type of dashboard for analytics for employees, where you can get a lot of information by looking at various graphs which are available. So everything I'm showing you here is what's available in the standard solution. You can, of course, decide what type of graphs that make sense for you. Now, this is divided into 3 different categories or focus areas: diversity and inclusion, organization alignment, and talent. Let's just take one example for diversity and inclusion. And here you can see distributions based on age, gender, pay grades, ethnicity, and nationality. And one of the key things you could do, just as an example, if you want to track within your organization, if you have any kind of gender pay gaps, you can do that by looking at this graph here. So I can see that for my executive tier, for my leadership team in the organization, there is definitely a gender pay gap between the average salaries for male and female. And using the filter panel, I'm able to drill down even to more information. So if I want to look at this from a country perspective, let's say I want to compare the dashboard for United Kingdom with the dashboard for US. then I can do that. So this is the dashboard based on the UK, and you can see that the data is quite balanced when it comes to gender pay gaps. If you want to look at the dashboard for the US, you can also pin this and then open a new dashboard. And in this case, instead of looking at the UK, I'm going to look at the United States, and then I will be able to see the gender pay grade based in the US, and I can see that there's definitely a big gap here at the executive tier layer. Of course, I can compare these dashboards again side by side using the functionality where we split into two panels and then drag one into one panel and then leave the other. Okay. So now let's take another example. And often organizations say, okay, this is all good, but doesn't help me, because what happens if I do have a requirement for a graph that is not available in the standard? What do you do in this case? You don't need to involve Nakisa professional services. You don't need to involve your own IT. You can do that directly on your own. In fact, let's take an example where we want to look at the gender pay grade. So the same concept, but instead of displaying pay grade as the y-axis here, I want to display the country distribution and then compare that to the gender. For a global organization, maybe this is something important. If you want to align the salaries of the different regions, maybe you want to do it this way. So you can go ahead and say, I want to add a custom chart. This is really going to be a bubble chart or a square chart. I'll give it a name. In this case, I will call it gender by country. So now I'm creating a graph on the fly. I will select the first field being gender, the second field being country, and I will select the operations. In this case, maybe I want to look at headcount. Maybe I also want to compare this with the average salaries. And I want to tag this as part of my diversity and inclusion HR focus area or program, and then I will do confirm. So right away, on the fly, I've created a graph here, which shows me the total headcount based on the countries that I have globally for this organization, and based on the different headcounts based on gender. So this is, again, quite useful, and I can switch to the operation average salary, so I can track the average salaries for my male versus female in the different countries, and I can compare them side by side here. And don't forget, using the filter panel, I can add another parameter if I wish to include, for example, different types of a functional area. Maybe corporate services is of interest to me, or maybe I want to look at the information based on engineering or different job family, or different or nationality, or even pay grade. So this is all I can do directly on the fly here. The dashboards are also maybe worth mentioning. These are all dynamic. So if at any point in time you want to look at a specific age category, you don't need to select it from the filter panel on the left-hand side. You can also simply click inside the graph. So the example I gave with the retirement, I can click on age 60 to 69 here, and this will change the information in all the other graphs accordingly. Okay, so I think that's it what I wanted to cover today in terms of the org charting capabilities as well as the organizational design capabilities of Hanelly. Just maybe one more thing I forgot to mention. We talked about reporting as being very important, and one of the key requirements that we often get as an organization is, you worked at a model and everything is good. You can share it with other users. That's also fine. But if I don't want to use this dynamic sharing of the models and I just want to export it. So yes, you can export any model that you have, or even the baseline. You can export it to PDF, and this really creates an interactive booklet. You can define the number of levels that you want to export, how many organization chart boxes per page, the orientation, and then you can do generate. Or if you want a PowerPoint presentation, which is typically what a lot of HR business partners or HR managers need to discuss changes in the organization with a leadership team or with the managers of these organizations, they can go ahead and do that. Again, the application works the same way. You don't get this annoying working on your request icon, which blocks you from continuing to work. Actually, you can continue working. Once it's ready, you will get a notification here. It will tell you that the export to PowerPoint is ready. You can go ahead and download it, and this will then open a presentation where you have the structure displayed in a PowerPoint presentation. Now, the advantages of this is that everything is really exported not as an image. So these are all objects, meaning that I can modify it. So as I deleted that position or delimited it, maybe it's not of interest to me to discuss this in the meeting. I can go ahead and remove that from the structure, so I don't need to discuss this specific organization. Maybe billing manager is not a good title. Maybe really I want to call this and promote him even further to become the billing director of this organization. I can also change the title of Winrose. I want to emphasize him more, so I can bring him up to the top. So all of these changes that you're doing, you can do it using the export to PowerPoint as object, as everything is really in editable format. So what makes Hanelly different? And just to summarize just some of the few points that we talked about in today's session, really it's all about gathering or building a solution which is designed based on experiences with world's largest organizations, which we partnered with throughout the years, and we try to understand the business challenges organizations face and build that into the solution to make it standard out of the box, so that when you use Hanelly, you don't need to invest furthermore. You have a solution that meets up to 90% to 100% of your requirements. You can go ahead with a quick deployment and run with it. So this is what I meant as well by ready out of the box: performance, scalability, security, data from the cloud. Often security becomes a topic when you talk about cloud solutions. In reality, the cloud offers a lot of security, which is even goes beyond the affordability of most businesses if they are having or preferring an on-premise model. Bi-directional integration is key, so that also simplifies the process of organizational design and also reduces the time it takes and the transformation projects that you need to go through, because it offers you that option to implement the changes real time with this bi-directional integration. Full HCM integration, we all know that this is really key for organizations instead of relying on Excel spreadsheets that become outdated, and also the ability to collaborate and have these cascading authorizations and cascading targets and objectives that you've seen when I showed the organizational design, where we had areas of the organization assigned and nominated for certain HR individuals to work on, and how they collaborate together and submit the changes for approval. So that's really what I wanted to cover in today's webinar, and I will just quickly go to the chat and try to take some questions. And so just a reminder, if you do have any questions, please feel free to go to the question box in the control panel if you haven't done that already, and I will do my best to answer any questions you may have. So there's a number of questions. Let me just quickly load the first one. So is the workflow process within Hanelly, or does it leverage the workflow your ERP system, for example, Employee Central workflows? So the authorizations will be leveraged from Employee Central. However, the workflow occurs within Hanelly, and it's basically based on what I've described. It's still configurable in a way that you can define additional layers. So what I haven't really shown you is the ability to as well share, and let me just do this very quickly here. Once you work on a model, you can actually share the specific model with other users, and you can define the type of access these individuals may have. So here I can either add a role within the organization. So this means everyone within that role will get access to the scenario, and then I can define the type of access they have, whether it's full access, meaning that they can modify it, or just read access. And this also adds additional ways of providing additional layers for your organizational design and approval. Okay. There is another question related to are the search options delivered? Let me just see if I can read it. Delivered list, or are they based on the employee and position details and the environment design? So The search options that I've shown you so far, these are all what we have defined as part of the standard out-of-the-box configuration based on requirements from our customers. You can see them here again: age, assistant, searching by city, cost center, country, critical resources, and so on. This does not mean you're only restricted to these. So these, of course, are information that could be coming from your ERP or could be coming from another source. So as I mentioned, Hanelly is a multi-source, offers multiple sources. I can connect to multiple different sources to gather the information into one place to allow me to do the organizational design that I need. So the HR data could be coming from your HCM source. The talent information could be coming from a whole different system. Maybe it's a cloud solution, maybe it's an on-premise solution. The financial information could be coming from a payroll system, again, separate from your ERP. We bring all that information together into Hanelly, and then we can define through configurations the type of fields that you want to display in as filter criteria, but also in the boxes that you've seen here. I've only focused on one view, but you have different views, again, designed to support different HR processes. For example, if I want to look at the succession view, I'll be able to look at, for every position in the organization, I'll be like, let's say the VP of Finance, I'm able to track who are the successors that are available. And in fact, with Hanelly, I can even do succession modeling directly there. So the type of information displayed is all configurable, including what you see in the profile pages of a position or an employee, or the searches, or even the views that you're defining. So you can create your own views as well to support your different processes. I hope this answers your question. A question regarding recording. Yes, this is definitely recorded, and we will be sending it to you following that webinar. You can, of course, share it internally if you need to, or if someone couldn't really attend, you can do that without any issues. Let me just go one more time, because I think there's a couple of questions I might have missed. There's a question about integration with SAP. How does that work? So that's a very good question. I mentioned that we are ERP agnostic, but we natively integrate with SAP. The way it works is with an SAP on-prem system, we use standard ALE technology to pull out the information, including the delta changes that happen on a regular basis. They can be scheduled to be pushed to Hanelly. And with SuccessFactors Employee Central, we're using standard APIs delivered by SuccessFactors, like OData APIs, for the read and also for the write back. When it comes to the write back with SAP on-prem, we are using standard remote function calls or function modules to trigger the write back following the approval process. So question about write back. To confirm, write back is what loads into your ERP system, correct? Is it a single click? So yes, so the write back, if we take an example of one of the ERPs we work with, let's say SAP on-prem, and you need to trigger you do the restructuring. Of course, when we talk about SAP, the data model is slightly different. So I've shown you a position-to-position structure, but you can also have an organizational structure that shows org units to positions to employees, which is typically the structure that our SAP customers are using. SuccessFactors customers would probably be using a position structure, as well as something which is called the company structure, which shows legal entities, business units, divisions, and departments, as well as positions. So you can, depending on the structure that you have, the type of information that gets written back is slightly different. But the reality is, we are writing back the organizational related changes. So we don't really write back to employee records. So if I speak about an SAP environment, we are writing back into organizational management, OM. We don't write into PA, personal administration, like certain transactions. Of course, if you do want us to write back into PA, we can do some configurations to allow for that. But there is reasons why we try not to impact the personal administration records, because every customer is different, and the way these transactions are being triggered differs from one customer to the other. But it's basically, yes, it is one click, but there's a lot of things that happen behind the scenes, including the data synchronization. You need to resolve anything which is conflicting. So maybe in your model that I worked on for the VP of Finance, someone went into the back end and changed VP to Senior VP of Finance. I need to merge these changes directly in my model before I can trigger the full write back. So there are conflicting and non-conflicting changes, and I need to resolve all this in the Hanelly solution. So you'll get a listing of these changes, and then you need to take actions directly in Hanelly before you can have a successful write back into the back end. Okay, I think maybe there's time for one more question. Okay, so I think that's, I don't see any other questions, but what we will do, if I did miss any questions, so please don't worry, I will go back and review if there's anything that was missed, and I will make sure that I address it by email together with the recording of this webinar. As we are approaching the end of the hour, I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in and for your time today. And I really hope that you found the solution useful and can really address your organizational challenges, and you were able to sort of get a feel for how the solution can help you address your challenges. Just a quick note before we end the webinar. We will be at the Sapphire Now event, which is taking place in Orlando, Florida, from May 7th to May 9th, I believe. And you will have the opportunity, if you are there, to really join our customers and partners, as well as solution experts, as they engage in conversations on HR, as well as the lease accounting topics. It's really a round table, very interactive environment, and you have the option to have a dedicated one-on-one sessions and time slots to ensure that all your questions and insights are being heard and answered. And that's it. So that really concludes our webinar. So thank you, everyone, and goodbye, and have a great day. Thank you.